Hey everybody, it is Friday, and so we have a word from one of our favorite sponsors, if not our favorite, Sunset Lake Sebede.com. You can use the code LEFTISBEST for 20% off their phenomenal products. Now, you can get Sebede at street corners, but it's dodgy, and oftentimes you have no idea what's in it. Well, with Sunset Lake, you don't have to worry about it. They are pesticide free. They use regenerative farming practices. They also treat their workers well in terms of labor practices. They donate to a bunch of causes that this show supports, like strike funds and reproductive rights. And we've matched and done fundraisers with them because we believe in the company so much, but also the product. I am a nightly user of Sunset Lake Sebede.
That's a real thing.
That's a real thing. I use the sleep gummies that are just like, I don't know how I can sleep without them. I mean, maybe that says something about me, but they're really phenomenal and they're not like a horrible prescription drug. They have smokables. They have keef. The gummies taste ridiculously good. The fudge tastes almost better. And you can find all of that, all of those wonderful products at sunsetlakesebede.com, and you can use the code LEFTISBEST for 20% off. I'm telling you, if you like Sebede products, you can't get anything better than Sunset Lake, just in terms of quality and in terms of supporting a company that you know is committed to doing the right things. Use code LEFTISBEST for 20% off, sunsetlakesebede.com. And now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
It is Friday, June 21st, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live, steps, from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, we will be wrapping up the news of the week in the first hour. And then later in the show, Matt Lieb of the Bad Hasbara podcast will be with us. It's a great show. You guys should check it out. Also on the program today, breaking, the Supreme Court has upheld a law that says guns may be taken from people under domestic violence restraining orders. Some good news. The New York Times reports that colleagues urged Trump-appointed Judge Cannon to step down from the Trump classified documents case, but she refused. This comes as she delays the trial yet again, agreeing to a hearing on the legality of Jack Smith's appointment, which is just BS, but another delay tactic by her. Armenia recognizes Palestine as a state, the latest country to do so. Israel has quietly transferred IDF legal authority in the West Bank to far-right settlers working for Smotrich. More on that in a bit. Manhattan prosecutors have dropped all charges against pro-Palestine Columbia student protesters. Wikipedia editors have officially declared the Anti-Defamation League as an unreliable source. I mean, Wikipedia for the win, honestly. Trump outraised Biden by more than $60 million last month per federal filings. CBS has unearthed a video from 1999 showing a Saudi-linked spy scouting locations for the 9/11 attacks. As a reminder, we did not go to war with Saudi Arabia, but just another piece of evidence of their involvement. Hawaii officials settle with youth climate activists. The state is compelled to achieve net zero emissions by 2045. Putin and Kim Jong-un hung out the other day, went for a joyride. Putin is now publicly threatening to help arm North Korea. And lastly, rest in peace, Donald Sutherland, legendary actor and anti-Vietnam War activist. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Casual Friday on the heels of an Majority Report Thursday. Hello to Bradley. Hello to Matt. Sam is out. Saul is graduating. That's a very big deal. Big deal. So congratulations to the Seder family. He will be back on Monday. Let's get into it now. We'll just be the two of us plus Bradley. You know, he'll jump in on occasion as well, talking about the news this week, wrapping some things up, covering stories that I think are important. Let's start here because all we've heard from the Republicans ahead of this debate that's happening next week, which we will be covering here on the show live, is that Biden is like, how is he going to get through this? How is he going to form a sentence? How is he going to perform in a setting where he's going to have to articulate himself and go back and forth against Donald Trump? They've been setting the expectation that Biden is basically going to come out there and just poop and then leave or something like that. I mean, it's really, they couldn't be, I think, setting the bar lower, which is probably good news for Biden because he needs this.
It's helped him before.
Yeah, in order to turn around some concerning polling that we're seeing come out of swing states, although we'll get into that in a bit, why I do think there's some positive news on that front. But this debate will be next week in Atlanta. CNN is hosting it. No audience. The candidates' mics are going to be muted except when it's their turn to speak. Because if you recall one of those Trump-Biden debates where Trump, I don't know, they upped his Adderall dose maybe a little bit too much or something like that because he just couldn't stop interrupting and it was a bad look. I also read that Ron Klain, Biden's former chief of staff, is going to be running the preparations for this debate, which is also good news, I think, for Biden, because one of the more under-discussed stories about the Biden administration is that when Ron Klain left as chief of staff, Jeff Zients took over, and that's when approval rankings tanked. That's when this disastrous response to Israel's genocide began. And Klain comes from politics. Jeff Zients comes from corporate America, and I think there should be more conversation about the fact that he doesn't seem to really know what he's doing from a political strategy perspective.
Let's talk about how the left is blowing this for Biden.
Right,
instead.
right. Klain has basically been saying that Biden needs to focus more on kitchen table issues, so I'd expect that's going to be what Biden focuses on during this debate. But here's Donald Trump. He went on the All In podcast, and
A bunch of crooks.
This is what he said are his predictions for the debate, and he's changing his tone a little bit.
You have a prediction for the debate next week? What's going to happen?
Well, all I can say is this. I watched him with Paul Ryan, and he destroyed Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan with the water.
True.
He was chugging water at a left and right. I didn't think a human being would be able to drink so much water at one time. And he beat Paul Ryan. So I'm not underestimating him. It is what it is. We'll see what happens. But you take a look at the last one. I happen to think he's incompetent for a lot of reasons. I think he's incompetent because he has gotten the worst policies, both foreign policy and internal policy. I mean, who would not want to have a wall? Who wants to have millions of people pouring in? Who wants to have high taxes? You know, taxes are going to raise by 4 times if this guy has his plan.
Is he in cognitive decline? Do you believe he's in cognitive decline, Mr. President?
Well, I shouldn't be the one to say that, but I don't think he's doing particularly well. But I didn't think he was well 25 years ago. I thought he was not a smart person. And that was told to me by
Ryan?
a certain member of the Kennedy family who was actually very friendly with me through a Palm Beach relationship. And I was told that very strongly. But so I was never a fan of his. But I will say he beat Paul Ryan. It was still years ago, but he beat Paul Ryan pretty badly. And I assume he's going to be somebody that will be a worthy debater. Yeah, I would say. I think okay. I don't want to underestimate him.
All right.
Well, you were for a really, really long time. So I think that, Bradley, you really have been saying this for weeks at this point, and you called it. The entire Republican Party could not be setting expectations lower for Biden, and you don't want a critical debate like this to have the floor be, I mean, the bar be on the floor, right? Because Biden will clear it. He is Trump's, like, he's a difficult candidate for Trump to attack because he's also a white guy, so he can't go to all the racist stuff. Republican voters are old too, so they're not going to love the "you're a doddering old man and I'm just a few years younger than you, but I'm going to bully you about that." And Biden has a strategy which I actually think is a pretty good one, where he just laughs in Trump's face. So I don't know. I mean, maybe they're a little worried at this point. And polling, even though it's still quite bad for Biden, I do think there's some indicators that they're showing, like, once it gets down to crunch time, people are going to start to remember what Trump presidency was like.
But this is, as we were discussing, this is where Trump's bravado and like braggadociousness, like AKA the primary strength with Republican voters for him, becomes a huge problem, because when he gets activated, he's literally going to say Biden essentially has the cognitive ability of a 2-year-old baby.
Right.
And when Biden literally strings a sentence together, as I said earlier, I'll get the Nikki Haley tattoo if Biden does not string a sentence together at the debate next week. So you can mark me on that again. I will get the tattoo if Biden can't
string one
sentence together.
Right.
But those expectations that Trump has laid, that is, and also very clearly now, it's clarifying that clearly somebody on his team was like, hey, you need to maybe just a little bit raise the bar for Biden, so when he does in fact complete a sentence, we don't all look like complete morons, because we were previewing him literally not being able to like remember his own name. Yeah.
We just got a great IM from Elon Jelk. I'm not sure what that means, but is a Palm Beach relationship code for a mutual friend of Jeffrey Epstein? I mean, kind of, right? A Kennedy, he knows a Kennedy who said Biden
is it Bobby, though, also?
It's probably Bobby.
Yeah, like that's like,
they were mutual friends with Jeffrey Epstein.
Right. Like, it's a Palm Beach relationship is a wild euphemism.
It really is.
You know, I think that the reason that they are so excited to push the cognitive decline narrative is because they're looking for easy propaganda, which is a Biden freeze up moment that they could run on. And I think they could get that. I'm
they
less optimistic. Like, and I think it could be bad. But I do want to say, like, this is where our independent media is. The All In podcast, a bunch of venture capitalists who like did pump and dumps
in front of green screen that look like a boardroom. I don't know.
It suggested to me that JD Vance might be the vice president, because I haven't looked at it, but I guarantee he's been on the All In podcast. But sorry, Trump brought up tax policy, and immediately Jason Calacanis jumped in with, "Do you think President Biden's in cognitive decline?" Like, can we have an adult conversation about policy anywhere in this, or does it all have to be in this sort of like vein of, is the old man very old? Yeah,
right.
These are old guys. Yeah, their brains are slowing down. Like, of course, this is just like that's how brains work. But I mean, you have the opportunity to do something different, and you're doing the exact same thing that, you know, trash media is.
And it's notable that he's talking about taxes there, because Trump just got a $50 million donation to his Make America Great Again super PAC from billionaire Timothy Mellon, one of the wealthiest members of the wealthiest families in this country. I think that Trump is basically saying, I am open for business. He's desperate to get into power to quash the multiple legal quandaries that he's in right now, or squash them, whatever you want to use. And I think that he's basically like, I'll take it, whatever you want. I mean, we saw that story with Miriam Adelson, the widow of the biggest Zionist donor to Republicans, Sheldon Adelson.
The current richest Zionist in the world, Miriam Adelson.
Owner of the Dallas Mavericks. She wants to bring casinos to Texas, apparently, and that was her effort. And the Christians are saying no, which I hope that's a pebble in her shoe for the rest of her days. But yeah, I mean, she has said, it was reported, I will give you a bunch of money and donate a bunch of money to you if you promise to annex the West Bank when you get into power. And he was like, you say jump. Well, I can't really jump at this point. My vertical's not great, but I'll theoretically say how high. So that's that. That's where we are at with that. We're going to take a quick break. We got a word from one of our sponsors, from Sam, and we will be back to talk more news in just a second.
Hey, folks. I know you've probably heard a lot about the benefits of fasting that are in the news. Obviously, a little bit like weight loss, but mental and physical performance, gut health, even longevity. But sometimes you probably worry about that whole not eating part. Well, that's exactly why Prolon was created. Want to introduce Prolon? It's a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting. It was researched and developed for decades at the University of Southern California Longevity Institute. It's backed by leading U.S. medical centers. Prolon helps promote healthy blood sugar, support cardiovascular health, and reduce abdominal fat. But Prolon isn't a diet. Prolon is science. It is science based on Nobel Prize-winning discoveries in medicine. And all this starts with the Prolon 5-day program. Snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state. It is unlike anything you've ever experienced. I did this, I don't know, what was it, like 2 or 3 months ago? I was terrified, but I had been reading about, the advantages of fasting in terms of particularly in terms of longevity is what really interests me. Because you go through different stages over the course of those 5 days. And by the time you get to day 4 and 5, there's a cellular regeneration that begins to happen. And I, of course, was terrified at the idea of how am I going to fast? Well, it's fasting, but with food. And I felt actually really great during the vast majority of it. I think I had one day where I had a little bit of a headache. But for the most part, I was great. I did the show all 5 days of the week. I was able to have dinner with Saul. Mine was soup and crackers and some of the Prolon stuff. But it really was doable. It's no wonder why thousands of doctors now recommend Prolon to support healthy blood sugar and cardiovascular health. Right now, Prolon is offering the Majority Report with Sam Seder listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. Go to prolonlife.com/majority. That's PROLON life.com. prolonlife.com/majority for this special offer. And of course, link will be in the YouTube and podcast description. Emma.
It might take all the strength I got.
We are back, folks. Let's talk about this latest polling that came out yesterday, Emerson polling. And on its face, it looks pretty bad for Biden. But I'm going to explain why I do think there's significant room for improvement for Biden here. Basically, in every swing state, Trump is polling ahead of Biden at this point. Let's scroll down, Bradley, if you don't mind. We can put this on the screen here. So this is the state polls you can see here. Arizona, if we could just put the cursor over. In Arizona, you can see that Biden is losing to Trump by 4 points. In Nevada, Trump is up by 3 points. In Georgia there as well, you can see Trump is up. That's a little less surprising. Michigan, Trump is up by 1 point. Pennsylvania as well. You have Trump up by 2. Michigan, Trump's up by 1. Wisconsin, Trump's up by 3. In Minnesota, they're tied.
Oh, I swear to God, if Joe loses Minnesota.
Because, Minnesota is in the middle of a real progressive upswing right now.
It also hasn't gone red since Nixon, right?
Yeah, it's that would be I think a shocking result, because then you scroll to the Senate numbers, if you don't mind going down to that, Bradley. Let's look at this. So Galejo is up against Kari Lake here, and is up by 4 points, not an incumbent either. So that's a pretty significant lead, especially when we know that I think July 3rd is the deadline for the Arizona pro-choice activists to submit the signatures that they need for abortion to be on the ballot in the fall. And it's around 380K for the signatures that they need, and they've already collected more than 500,000. It gives them wiggle room in case some of the signatures get thrown out. But that should only increase Galejo's lead there. And that just seems like, so Biden being down by 4 points, but Galejo being up by 4, that's a massive difference. And it shows that, yes, there's a significant lack of enthusiasm for Biden. But that is a kind of split that is not going to hold on election day, I'm telling you. Because people go to the polls and they vote down ballot. And there will be people that leave it blank, or maybe even vote for Trump and vote for Galejo, although I think that will be quite marginal. But that just means that's an 8-point room for improvement right there, with a Democratic non-incumbent leading Kari Lake by 4 points. And then Jackie Rosen, who is an incumbent, but is up by 12 in Nevada, and Biden is down by 3. I mean, that is just incredible there. Right? 50% to 38. She's up by 12 points.
What it looks like to me is a giant opportunity being wasted on a massively unpopular presidential candidate.
Oh, and sorry, it's Gallego. I'm sorry for saying it incorrectly. Thank you for correcting me, CPJ, on the IMs.
And also,
yes.
just to foreground to this right before, Amy Klobuchar being up 11 in Minnesota, as well in this Michigan Senate race. Alyssa Slotkin also being up
by 4 points.
4%. It's like, it's seemingly, as we're saying, even in places where we weren't even anticipating this level of like competition, Klobuchar is not even competitive for her, and yet it's tied electorally for the marquee race. It's just like,
yeah, so tied in Minnesota, but Klobuchar's
baffling.
up by 11. That's the differential between Biden and Klobuchar. And then, as you said, in Michigan, Slotkin, not an incumbent, but she's up by 4 points as a centrist Democrat, and Biden is down by 1 point. Pennsylvania, you turn. Trump's up by 2. Bob Casey is up by 6. In Wisconsin, Tammy Baldwin is up by just 2 points, which is a little surprising to me. But I do think Wisconsin, I'm not sure. I'd imagine she wins that race, but Trump is up by 3 points in Wisconsin right now.
Wisconsin is basically, I don't think, ever had a non-close, like, gubernatorial or Senate race in like 20 years. So even if like that doesn't surprise me as much in terms of the margin, I still do think for now Tammy Baldwin is not going to lose. But
yeah. So the enthusiasm gap is as significant as it could be, right? Biden is clearly a drag on the Democrats' chances. He's being carried by people who generally view Democrats as better than Republicans because right now the negative partisanship about Republicans and Trump is quite high. But the point that I want to make here when you look at this is that is room for improvement that I do think Biden will close. Is it enough to win? I have no idea. But there will probably be people who are inclined to vote for him, who want to vote for the Democrat for Senate, who will probably do so down ticket, and it's not necessarily being reflected right now in national or swing state polling. The other thing I wanted to mention too, could we scroll down to the approval ratings in those states as opposed to right here? This is perfect if we could put this on the screen. So Biden's approval rating in the swing states here, Arizona 36%, Georgia 35%, Michigan 39%, Minnesota 38%, Nevada 38%, Pennsylvania 39%. So high to mid 30s in terms of approval.
No 40s anywhere.
And he's majority disapproval in all of those swing states.
Plus 50 everywhere.
But then you scroll down to those state issues there. If we could go to the abortion part, voters in Arizona and Nevada were asked if they would vote yes or no on a potential ballot measure to establish the constitutional right to abortion in their state. In Arizona, 56% would vote yes, 26% would vote no, 18% not sure. But that's already a majority by 6 points. Voting yes in Arizona, and if those signatures hold, as I mentioned earlier, abortion is likely to be on the ballot in Arizona, which just means great things for I'm already pretending, Gallego, not Gallego, Gallego, and Biden most likely. And then in Nevada, it's also probably going to be on the ballot. And the approval for an abortion measure is 58% who would vote yes versus 20% who would vote no, 21% unsure. And that measure is probably going to be on the ballot as well. June 26th is the deadline in Nevada to have the collected signatures provided to ensure that it is a ballot measure. And organizers also say they have more than enough signatures in that instance. So in Nevada and Arizona, that is the good news for the Democrats running there, including Biden. But
look, Hillary lost in part because people decided not to vote one way or the other on the top of the ticket and voted on the rest of it. So I could imagine people doing the exact same thing with Biden here. I hope that that doesn't happen. But, you know, like on the plus side, the Supreme Court isn't on the ballot like it was for Trump in 2016. And I think that pulled a lot of people in, and he's a felon. So there's some things, hurting Trump. So I'm not saying, I think people do overstate, especially with our politics, because Biden deserves to lose, for instance, for supporting genocide, that he will lose, which is not to say that they're not preferable to Republicans. I'm not saying that. But I also just want to, people might remember this because I've been harping on it for a while, but I think, the politics reporters started talking about this supposed one-term pledge that Joe Biden made. And there's this thing about, is there a Mandela effect? Did he actually never really say that? And I mean, the truth is that Politico floated it as an advisor saying that in 2019. And then they later denied it. But he also said the same thing in 2016. And what all of this, like, did he say that or didn't he say that, avoids is that he should be a one-term president, and he should not be running for re-election again. And that's been clear for the entirety of this year, and it was clear last year. If you really are this committed to, say, supporting Israel, do it as a lame duck president and let the rest of us move on with democracy.
I would love that if that were the case, but we know it's not going to happen. He had to have made that decision months ago. Yeah. And we were right to say that he should, and that the generic Democrat would win. And I think
and the loss
win
is on
pretty
him,
handily if that happens. Oh yeah.
And them, because like this demonstrates another just a lack of ability to seek an advantage in our political system, which desperately needs people that seek progress to have an advantage. And Trump is an insanely weak presidential candidate that should be, again we're here in this position that Donald Trump, like, he can turn people out, but again, you should be able to run up the score on this guy.
Oh yeah.
And instead we are actually, any sort of headwind that we have, or any sort of like wind in the sails, like the abortion stuff, we're using it to send just more bombs to Israel and say, no, Bibi, we're actually not delaying nothing. We got you full back. So like, I mean, I hope it works. And I wouldn't. And
Biden should be running on things like Medicare, Social Security, I don't know, taxing the rich. These are the kinds of things that we've run through issue polling with Sam.
And to be fair, they kind of are.
Well, we'll see what his tactic is in the debate. And as I said earlier, Ron Klain being the one responsible for debate preparation makes me think that they will do that. So I do think that this looks more positive on its face for Biden than the polling indicates when you just look at it. That's really that was my takeaway from it. But I also
hope so.
I share your frustration. So I headlined this yesterday, but Louisiana has done something insane. They now have a Republican governor, and they have passed a law requiring public schools to display the 10 Commandments in all of the state's classrooms. Now, anybody who has an even rudimentary understanding of the Constitution might say, hey, doesn't that violate the Establishment Clause? Doesn't that violate the First Amendment that says Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof? Doesn't it?
That's been litigated before?
Well, it will be. I mean, the ACLU media is like, we're suing. Of course they are. The law says that the commandments must be 11 by 14 inches or larger. So they have a minimum requirement for the size of the paper, and be in a large, easily readable font. And so they want people to read it. They want the students to have the Ten Commandments on display in front of them. And it's also just like explicitly said by the bill's sponsors what they want to do in terms of furthering Christian nationalism. Let's pull up this quote by Representative Dodie Horton. She sponsored the bill here. Horton has previously defended the bill during a House debate last month that the Ten Commandments are the basis of all laws in Louisiana, she said, arguing that the legislation honors the country's religious origins. This is her quote. "I'm not concerned with an atheist. I'm not concerned with a Muslim," she said when asked about teachers who might not subscribe to the Ten Commandments. "I'm concerned with our children looking and seeing what God's law is." So that's pretty explicit. Then the governor, when the governor was signing this bill, talked about Moses. So the quote is, "If you want to respect the rule of law, you've got to start with the original lawgiver, which was Moses." Okay. And then CNN's Boris Sanchez has had one of the Louisiana state representatives on who is supportive of this, co-authored the Ten Commandments legislation in the state. Sanchez is like one of CNN's best hires in years. I'm not exactly... I mean, he is just really good in these settings in particular. So it's obviously unconstitutional, or at least it should be, with this Supreme Court.
Yeah.
Who knows? Lots of theocrats on the Supreme Court. But they're just like wasting Louisiana and the people's there's time, because they're just wrapping up like the state's infrastructure in these legal battles to defend a display of the Ten Commandments in every classroom. So anyway, Sanchez here is speaking with Louisiana State Representative Lauren Ventrella. She co-authored the Ten Commandments legislation, and he corners her with her own insanely flawed logic here.
So when you talk about the moral fiber of our country, you realize that this country is an amalgamation of cultures, right? And different faiths. And even within Christianity, people don't interpret those commandments the same way.
Well, what's important about this bill and what's important to remember about this country is that whether we like it or not, Moses is in the Supreme Court of the United States. The Ten Commandments are in the Supreme Court of the United States. Moses is on the law in Congress. This is part and ingrained in our nation. This is a historical document that's important in Louisiana, because in Louisiana, we believe in faith, family, and freedom. And that is why I voted in favor of this bill.
Sure, but you also recognize that the Constitution of this country, its founding document, doesn't include the word God or Jesus or Christianity, and that's for a reason, because the founding fathers founded this country as a secular one. You don't
Boris,
see that?
I bet you CNN pays you a lot of money. I bet you got a bunch of dollar bills.
What does this have to do with the network that I work for or what I'm getting paid? Don't make this about that. Answer the question. Why did the founding fathers not include God in the Constitution if they wanted this country to be the way that you see it?
Let me finish my statement.
Answer the question and don't make this about me.
In God we trust. Well, make it about me. I got a dollar bill in my wallet. In God we trust is written on that dollar. It is not forcing anybody to believe one viewpoint. It's merely posting a historical reference on the wall for students to read and interpret it if they choose.
But fundamentally, you understand that there's a separation between church and state, and that if you're a student at a school, say you're Muslim or Hindu or atheist, having that on the wall, doesn't that endorse a specific set of beliefs?
Absolutely not. It is a historical document. Again,
but there are historical documents. There are historical documents that actually this law authorizes to be displayed in classrooms, like the Mayflower Compact, the Declaration of Independence, and others. But this one is specifically religious, and there's a difference there. I mean, that seems pretty clear that there's a difference between a random historical document and one that endorses a very specific view of a very specific denomination within a religion.
I don't agree with you that this is a random historical document. This is
I didn't say it was random, but there are others. Go ahead.
This is a very valuable document. Look, this nation has gotten out of hand with crime, with the bad, negative things that are going on. Why is it so preposterous that we would want our students to have the option to have some good principles instilled in them? If they don't hear it at home,
good principles.
Look, I'm up for the optionality, but Quran, they have some lessons.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, there are many historic documents that we could put on display in every classroom and mandate it. Yeah, you want to put the Quran on there? Yeah. What? I mean, all historic documents have to be on display because they have some sort of educational value according to this logic. But why this one then? Why this one? That's the question.
By Thomas Paine. How about that one?
Yes, we can pick anything. I mean, I've checked the rule book. There are many documents in the history of this world that are considered historical.
You know what vibe I'm getting from this lady?
What?
Kanye will be looked at as someone that saved the Jews.
Yeah, right. I mean, it really is incredible to see her kind of fall apart here, and then he's cornered her on this, and she moves to crime. I guess the display of the Ten Commandments
historical document.
Will indoctrinate the children in the way that she likes to make them non-criminals. Because you know who's non-criminals? It's non-Christians. Duh. The Muslims, the atheists, the godless pedophiles. Oh, wait, did I express my ideology too succinctly there for you? All right, keep going.
Have some good principles instilled in them. If they don't hear it at home, let them read it in the classroom.
If they don't hear it at home.
The Mayflower Compact, which is mentioned in the document as well. I don't understand why this is so preposterous and that litigation is being threatened. It doesn't scare us in the state of Louisiana. We say bring it on.
Because if someone has a home in which they choose to believe something different, which is welcome in this country, it's literally why people fled to come here to found this country to begin with, then they should be allowed to. And it's not really an option if you're requiring it to be put up in the wall of a classroom. What do you say to the parents of students or even teachers who don't share your religious views?
Don't look at it.
Look,
what would you say if your child had to go to a classroom in which the 5 pillars of Islam were required to be on the wall? How would you feel?
Again, this is not about the 5 pillars of Islam. This bill specifically states the 10 Commandments. It is a historical document.
I'm presenting you with a hypothetical that would help you put yourself in the shoes of someone you may not understand and their point of view. How would you feel if you walked into a classroom and something you didn't believe in was required to be on the wall? You can answer that question.
I appreciate you, Chris. I cannot sit here and gather and fathom what you could give me 1,000 hypotheticals. But again, this specific bill applies to this specific text. The Quran or Islam, that is a very broad statement. We're specifically talking about a limited text on, mind you, a piece of paper that's not much bigger than a legal sheet of paper. Some kids might even need a magnifying glass to read all of this. This is not so preposterous that we're somehow sanctioning and forcing religion down people's throat. I've heard the comments, and it's just ridiculous.
I mean, a requirement is a requirement, right? Your law mandates a specific version of the commandments be posted. Here is one of them. I want to share it with our viewers. It says, quote, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife, nor his manservant, nor his maidservant, nor his cattle, nor anything that is thy neighbor's." I'm wondering why this specific version of the commandments was selected.
So the reason why for that is because it is the most historical reference. It is one of the original translations into the English language, and to preserve the actual history of the document. The drafters of the legislation felt that it was very important to maintain that historical context and that language that portrays it in the best historical light possible.
I'm in no way diminishing anyone's beliefs. I don't think that my personal beliefs are important to this story, but I do have to point out and ask you about the fact that religious scholars don't even agree who wrote the 10 Commandments, where or when they were written. Does that not give you pause in any way that this comes from a religious document and not from something that's based in secular agreement or in a doctrine that a group of people have come to accept, something like the Constitution?
Look, religious scholars may not agree, but I'm going to tell you right now, Louisiana in both houses agreed, and we passed this legislation. Look, Louisiana is not California or New York. It may make people uncomfortable in other states, but in this legislature this year, it was a resounding acceptance of this legislation, and that's what's most important.
What should a teacher tell
all right. I keep waiting for him to let up on her. This is why we like Boris Sanchez in this house. He did not move on to anything else. He just kept going at her. Like, first of all, when she brought up that money example, In God We Trust was not on our currency at the founding of this country. I believe it was added in the late 1800s to mid 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. And I mean, even in
One Nation Under God was Eisenhower. That's right.
Right, Eisenhower was when we added One Nation Under God to the Pledge of Allegiance.
Also, it's not specific about any God, so it's less of a problem than the
I
Ten
don't like
Commandments.
it.
I don't like it either, but it's simply less of a problem than the Ten Commandments. But again, if we're going to do the Ten Commandments, very simply, let everything else in, too.
Right, well, and I love don't look at it. Well, then what the point?
Look at the Quran.
That was a bad Louisiana accent by me. But why then do they need to mandate it to put it in every classroom if
it's easily readable?
If there's a separate section of students that will have to avert their gaze because they don't agree with it, why are you placing the burden on them? And that's why there is the Establishment Clause. And I would love to hear if she makes that argument about a pride flag. Just don't look at it. Don't look at it.
I'm talking simply about historical document. I don't know why you're bringing in all this other stuff. I mean, that woman represented just a foot soldier. And when she is gone, the system of sort of white evangelical fascism that has put her in her place will put someone else in the place. And that's why it's not her job to know what religious scholars think about any of this stuff. Her job is to repeat some talking points and do the votes that she's told to make.
Right.
Yeah, I love that. I really also appreciated that Bayou Bobert over here said that basically
Bayou Bobert, good job.
That she basically said Islam and the Quran, that's a really broad thing. I'm like, but if we were just to do a direct application, Christianity and the Ten Commandments is not a broad thing.
No, it's natural law. Why don't you understand?
Right. Somehow Islam and the Quran and those pillars, if you put them in a vacuum, pillars from a religious text of a broad-based religion, one of them is like, whoa, we'd be really, really opening up a big can of worms there.
Yeah.
But we gotta have. Listen, the legislature agreed.
Yeah.
We have to preserve history.
Yeah.
Chad is right. That's a real Vergonia head. There.
Oh, totally. She will be she will ironically purchase our Vergonia flag T-shirt, but not understand because she doesn't seem to really be that quick.
No, that's an understatement.
Yeah. From that fun story to something a little bit more serious. This was a great segment done by Lester Holt and NBC, and a really outrageous story. Michigan county jails are currently under fire by some civil rights groups who filed a lawsuit against them a few months back in March. Jails in Michigan, county jails, banned in-person visits a few years ago for inmates in favor of a video call system, which is cruel in and of itself. But
bet you someone's making a nice profit off it, though.
Yes. That's, of course, what it was about. That's the crux of the story.
Sorry.
No, I mean, but it is Occam's razor. Of course somebody's making money off of it. They filed a lawsuit, and the civil rights groups basically alleged that it was a quid pro quo kickback scheme. Obviously, these prison phone companies were making a lot of money because, I mean, it really is just extremely disgusting.
A prison phone company wouldn't be unscrupulous and exploitative, would they?
No. These private telecommunications companies did a deal with Michigan counties and their governments, and what do you know? The county governments got their beaks wet as well, and they pocketed some money as a part of this. So these private telecommunication companies known as Securus Technologies and Viapath, they operate the systems. They get some money because they charge a fee for every time a family member wants to contact somebody who's in a county jail. Then the county
You're playing the game called capitalism.
Yep. Then the county government's pocket a portion of the money that's made there. But the people that get hurt are people like this woman who was profiled here by NBC. And it opens with her, the only way she's able to speak to her loved ones.
Hello, how you doing today?
What begins as excitement ends in tears for Rakila Harris Dudley and her children.
Don't cry.
Separated by less than 2 miles and by a jail policy that doesn't allow in-person visitation. Rakila's parents, Philip and Brenda, have been caring for her children.
Every day, where's Mama? When she's coming home?
It must have made for some rough moments with the kids.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
I said, well, right now, Granny's mommy, and I'm going to hold you until you feel better.
Replacing free in-person visits with costly video calls has become the norm in hundreds of jails across the country. Here, a 25-minute call typically costs $10.
It just costs too much, and it's not even guaranteed that it's going to work.
Now, the policy is at the center of 2 lawsuits in Michigan, including one of them here in Genesee County, which is fighting it, arguing there's no constitutional right for in-person visitations. But civil rights attorney Alec Carrick-DeSantis disagrees and says video-only visits are painfully inadequate.
We think there's a constitutional right for children to hug their parents.
The video calls are operated by for-profit telecommunications companies, but counties like Genesee get to pocket some of the revenue. Carrick-DeSantis calls it a kickback scheme.
The theory behind these contracts seems to be if you stop kids from visiting their parents in person, these desperate families will be forced to spend more money on phone and video calls.
This is Rakila's first time in jail. She says her son's father physically abused her for years, leaving this scar. She's accused of violently retaliating against him after she says he attacked her in February.
It was a fight or flight moment. I never thought that I would do anything like that.
Rakila couldn't afford bail, so this screen is the closest she can get to seeing her children.
How does it feel that someone is making money off this?
It feels disheartening. It feels criminal.
I feel it's greed. Greed.
Sheriff Chris Swanson runs the jail and was a strong supporter of the policy when it began 10 years ago. He is personally named in the lawsuit.
How much money is the county making from video visits right now?
Over $400,000.
What was the reasoning behind it?
Money. I became the undersheriff in 2010. We had to cut 10% of our budget. When it came to the revenue, it was very attractive, and it still is to sheriffs across the country. But we're going to change that.
And by change that, Sheriff Swanson meant now. In our interview, he told me that he believes he made a mistake, and regardless of how the court rules, he says he's reversing course, reinstating in-person visits starting next month.
We're going to return to in-person visits, and we're going to reinvest our revenues back to lowering costs for jail calls and video visitations.
You're going to be leaving money on the table.
Okay, I hated this part of this.
And it's money that doesn't.
This piece, but the end of it is this like puff piece about this guy.
He wouldn't have sat down for it with.
Of course, right? I know, but
nice watch, Sheriff.
But right, right.
Speaking of reinvestment,
yeah, reinvesting in this bling. I don't know. I mean, just look. Could you just put it on the screen? Look at this guy. Look at that watch. Look at that watch.
I love that. I love that he was like, no, yes, I'm extremely evil.
Right. I mean, and he sat down with him and he admitted it was about the money. So the value of that to have some, I realized the wrong of my ways tacked on the end is, I'm sure NBC needed that, and I'm not begrudging them. I just don't want to subject you guys to that.
When you're the Genesee County Sheriff and on your schedule for the week is Lester Holt coming down to interview you, I think you want to change course particularly quickly so you can go back to doing the insidious stuff that you're already doing.
Yeah.
That isn't as high profile.
Yeah. This is just, by the way, people are pointing this out. Mr. Melancholy, well, actually, that's not the right I am, but this is a good thought. Seems like it's cruel and unusual punishment to deny people to see their children in person, let alone the corrupt nature on top. Absolutely. But CHR writes in, Genesee County includes Flint. The amount of crap folks in Flint have gone through already makes this extra blood boiling, which is exactly right. And this is in the north, Michigan and Flint, of course, no angels there, but the amount of like abuses that happen in prisons in Louisiana or in Mississippi that goes unreported. I mean, you have no air conditioning in some of these cells in the middle of the deep south, and heat waves and people being thrown in solitary confinement and no unsanitary conditions and abuse and violence by workers at the prison and things like that. It's just scratching the surface. But
America's the number 1 jailer of human beings on planet Earth. In raw numbers, we jail more people than China.
This article at NBC tracked this, or put this tracker by Prison Policy Initiative, and it just says 74% of jails that implemented video calls also banned in-person visits, like in Michigan, where a majority of the county jails follow this model. Meaning, this is not a supplement. This isn't like, hey, you can also be charged to talk to your family via video call, but they can come and see you in person as well. It's just like the only way that they can talk to people. It's completely compulsory and abusive. And, you know, even the case of that woman with that scar on her face, it's her first offense, and she retaliated with violence because she was being abused by a man. Our system has failed people.
And a cash bail system.
Over and over. Oh, yeah. Right, apparently.
Should she be stuck in there because she doesn't have enough money?
Okay, yeah, actually, that's a good point. So all these critics of cash bail, you think that woman should be crying because she can't talk to her kids or see her family in person?
What effect does that have on the family?
Think she deserves that? Right. Well, I mean, in pretrial detention, there's a lot of those, thousands and thousands and thousands of those instances.
Yep.
So that's what tough on crime gets you. An outrageous story and an example of our sick prison industrial complex that's even outside of private prisons. The privatization of just the simple things in life and the gouging of the most desperate people who literally have no other option because they're in cages.
Yep.
For profit.
The same profit motive tried to do this to schools, right? Like, this is sort of the Gates initiatives, and like, let's get tablets and stuff like that. And the sad truth is that we care more about our kids than our imprisoned population in this country, and we allow these things to happen. I mean, thankfully, you have people looking out for inmates' rights that are able to at least get some breaks on the, hey, yeah, let's not turn the entire thing where people get to come visit you into just a place for surveillance and tech companies to profit, grift. It's, despicable.
I'm curious what the both the keeping families together and self-defense crowd think about this woman toiling in a prison cell while her children are being taken care of by her parents.
Probably the same.
While she's there because she can't afford to be released because she defended herself from getting beat up by her partner. Yeah,
probably the same reaction that the NRA had or didn't have to Philando Castile being shot by a cop, even though he was a legal gun owner. Last story before we speak to our friend Matt Lieb. Just an update on the West Bank here. So obviously the ongoing genocide in Gaza and the effects of it remains extremely dire. More than 30 Palestinian children in Gaza have died of malnutrition that we know of in recent months. 16,000 children that we know of have been killed. 16,000. And 40,000 plus Palestinians killed. The official toll is around 37,000, but that doesn't count the thousands and thousands that are unaccounted for and under rubble. And even those people unaccounted for, probably, if you were to include all of them as dead, probably is still lower than the real death toll. And that's part of, I think, the urgency that that the Israeli government is engaging in as it relates to the genocide, because once independent investigators get into Gaza, what we will find out will be, earth-shattering.
Yeah, and the flip side is like it's not just death that is a pretty unbearable condition to live through in that part of the world. Like the amount of starvation and the amount of just people displaced by missiles in places that they were told they were safe. Millions of people being marched up and down coastline in the midst of a genocide.
I heard this in Democracy Now's headlines today, and Amy Goodman made this point that children in Gaza haven't been to school in 8 months. I mean, just like thinking about what their life...
What future's being foreclosed on.
Yeah. How can you live your life? How can anyone in Gaza live their life? Live their life after this? And so it's just the most horrible news story I've ever lived through, and I say that still. And in the West Bank, things aren't really going great either, obviously. So the occupied West Bank was always the next target. The landmass is much larger. That's where the settlements are growing under the Israeli government's permission structure. The landmass is much larger for the West Bank in terms of what they want to see is it borders the Jordan River, Jordan and Syria. And Israel's moving their war aims to the north in southern Lebanon, where they're preparing to fight Hezbollah, likely in the next few days. Hezbollah has a much more formidable and well-funded fighting force than any of these militias in Gaza. So it's going to be an entanglement for the Israeli government that I think is not going to end well for them, because the Biden administration has shown complete deference to this far-right genocidal colonial state. But in terms of like involving the U.S. in a wider war, I think Biden actually is very reticent to engage in that, honestly. So
at least the exchange with Iran was positive. You know, it's hard
exactly
to bank on too much in the future, but that was good.
That was good. And but without U.S. support, if Israel's engaging in as a pariah state at this point, in a war with Hezbollah, that's really overextending themselves, and I think doesn't spell a good future for the Zionist project, which I'm okay with. God, so many people are going to die. And it's horrible. So in the West Bank, this news story came out yesterday. Bezalel Smotrich, who is the far-right finance minister of Israel and basically the de facto governor of the West Bank, appointed by Netanyahu, is getting more power in the West Bank. And a reminder of who this guy is, earlier this year, Smotrich had said that there's no such thing as the Palestinian people. He declared him and his family the real Palestinians. He said that at an event in Paris in front of a map of Israel, in quotes, that included Jordan, just in the West Bank, of course, but also Jordan. He is one of the most vocal advocates for annexing the West Bank in this government. And here's some reporting on his increased authority in the West Bank from The Guardian. The Israeli military has quietly handed over significant legal powers in the occupied West Bank to pro-settler civil servants working for the far-right minister Bezalel Smotrich. An order posted by the Israel Defense Forces on its website on May 29th transfers responsibility for dozens of bylaws by the civil administration, the Israeli body governing the West Bank, from the military to officials led by Smotrich and his defense ministry. Now, let's just stop here for a sec. And you can just see in the framing, and it's never really talked about within the context of this war, again, I'm saying in quotes, you see there, just in that sentence, the Israeli body governing the West Bank. We're pretending like this is a sovereign nation in this war. If the United States was massacring its own civilians within its borders that the United States controls, would we call that a war? Would we call that a war? Or would we call that a slaughter of fellow people under United States control? And like, say they weren't officially citizens. Say they were, like, undocumented people.
Say they were colonial subjects.
Right. In a modern context, say they were undocumented migrants in this country who didn't have status, and we were just killing them en masse. Would that be a war? Or would that be what it is? It is the latest coup for Smotrich, who became finance minister and a minister in the defense ministry after a coalition agreement between his far-right political party and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud party. The civil administration is principally responsible for planning and construction in Area C of the West Bank, the 60% of the occupied Palestinian territories under full Israeli administrative and security control, as well as enforcement against unauthorized construction, whether by Israeli settlers or by Palestinians. The transfer of laws, which was largely unremarked upon in Israel, follows a years-long campaign by pro-settlement politicians to accrue many of the legal powers previously wielded by the military chain of command. The laws cover everything from building regulations to the administration of agriculture, forestry, parks, and bathing locations. Lawyers have long warned that transferring them from military to political control would risk bringing Israel into conflict with its responsibilities under international law.
Well, I mean, there's a little bit of euphemism going on here. Like the issue with why the West Bank and Gaza haven't been annexed in Israel isn't just because Israel's was restrained in land grabbing, because that's not something they are capable of. The reason is because there's too many Palestinians there, and they do not want to incorporate them in their official demographics, because that would lead the apartheid conclusion to be too clear. Like when Amnesty International reached the apartheid conclusion, they basically said, look, we're not going to, it's been 50 years. We're not going to treat these territories as if they're not part of Israel. So you can pretend that, oh, look at these people within the proper Israel that we give such good rights to.
Right.
Actually, everybody counts. And that's the problem here, is the right wing of Israel doesn't care about world opinion about that matter.
They don't, because they're fascists and they're trying to operate under a might equals right mentality, and that's why they have to be stopped.
It's all they've known.
But it's all they've known, and they've never faced real consequences for it. I think we're at a really critical point here. But to what you're saying, it's this fiction. Like, Israel funds the Palestinian Authority, which runs the West Bank, and in retaliation for, I guess it was Norway, Spain, and I'm forgetting the third European country that recognized Palestine as a state at that one particular day or 2-day period. Ireland. They said, we're not funding the Palestinian Authority anymore. We're cutting off money to them, which, that basically is the entirety of their funding, because it's an occupying power, and the Palestinian Authority is already basically, rightly, I think, accused by Palestinian people as being a puppet for the Israeli government, or at the very least heavily weakened and compromised puppet. And so they retaliated against 3 other states recognizing Palestine as a state by cutting off their funding. And a month ago, it was reported that the Palestinian Authority is going to run out of money. And that runs like civil society for people in the West Bank. And then at the same time, it's this news story that this freak Smotrich is being given more authority. So after entering government, Smotrich moved to quickly approve thousands of new settlement homes, legalize previously unauthorized wildcat outposts, and make it more difficult for Palestinians to build homes and move around. Reports in the Israeli media say U.S. officials have privately discussed the possibility of imposing sanctions on Smotrich over his destabilizing impact on the West Bank, where he lives in a settlement that is illegal under international law. Netanyahu has become more reliant on the support of Smotrich and other far-right elements of his coalition's government since the moderate former defense minister, Benny Gantz, quit Israel's emergency war cabinet in a row over strategy in the Gaza war and how to bring home Israeli hostages held by Hamas. Look, a lot of this is just like palatial theater to a degree, but that's what we were saying about Benny Gantz, theatrically quitting. It meant nothing. It actually may have meant worse things. It just, actually, no, I think it meant nothing. It just made it more clear what the actual project is here. And Netanyahu being more reliant on the far right, that die has already been cast when he formed a coalition government with these people. Yeah. And these are also Netanyahu's aims. He just had to do a political dance to basically appease people who may be a little bit queasy about a guy like Smotrich denying the existence of Palestinian people at all. He had to do branding that I'm not as bad as this guy, but in the end, their aims are exactly the same, and it's obvious because he's literally getting more power as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, our entire life is Israeli society turning against the fiction that we need to appeal to the sort of liberal order and more just handing power to their fundamentalists and fascists, locally. And it's a logic that is predicted by people who talk about settler colonialism, and that's why proponents of Zionism have such a tough time and hate when people use that term, because it actually accurately predicted all this.
All right, folks, quick break, and when we come back, we are going to be joined by Matt Lieb of Bad Hasbara. We'll talk a little bit more about the state of the world, particularly the Zionist project, and we'll probably have some more fun with it because Matt's a comedian, and he's good at making us laugh in these dark times. Be right back. We are back, and we are joined by Matt Lieb, the host of the Bad Hasbara podcast, which I have been a part of. I joined for a really fun episode at one point, and also the husband of friend of the show, Francesca Fiorentini. I mean, I probably should have led with that as a, because
that's my first credit. That's my most important credit.
Cuck. And
I'm a simp, born simp.
Or simp, either one.
Mm-hmm.
Your podcast is phenomenal. I mean, when I'm looking for a defense of Israel, I go to you.
Yeah, I want to thank you so much for having me on your show. Didn't know that I was signing up to be on the anti-Israel report, but I'm very excited for whatever kind of, pro-Hamas propaganda we're going to be talking about here. Right. Also, I see that Sam Seder isn't here. I guess you don't want to have too many Jews on one show. Is that what's going on?
Kind of. I said, no two Jews. Only one Jew.
Yeah, you can only do one Jew at a time here at the minority deport. That's what I'm calling it.
Yep. Well, I think it's called racial quotas. Okay.
That's right.
So we obviously adhere to racial quotas. So how's the Zionist project going, Matt? I mean, kind of
great.
Seems like stuff's falling apart a little bit, but
no, that's you're watching the wrong news, obviously, and you're reading the wrong human rights reports. So if you read the correct ones, then you'll find out that actually everything's going pretty great. Everyone's happy. I don't know if you ever check out the Israel Twitter feed, the official Twitter feed of Israel, but on a regular basis, they like to do like a listing of like some website does the happiest countries, and Israel is always in the top 5. So, I mean, if that's not proof, what else is proof that Israel is happy?
Well, I that's all I care about is Israel being happy, obviously. But so people can be happy for different reasons. Like people who are on, say, LSD can be happy, but does it mean they're in reality?
I mean, listen, the people can be on heroin and be happy. I was on heroin for a long time, and I was super happy.
Yeah.
And then, it got a little too much, and eventually I sobered up, and then October 7th happens, and I sobered up again, but this time pro-Israel. So Zionism is like heroin in a way. you think you've kicked your habit after going to college, and then something happens in the news and you become a fascist.
Yeah, so, all right, all kidding aside, I'm abandoning that now. Your show is basically in reaction to, I don't know, we've talked about this a little bit, but some of the conversations that you've had with people in your life that have been a little bit frustrating. Well, what is Hasbara? Can you tell our audience what that even is? And like what really prompted you to start your show?
So Hasbara is loosely like the Hebrew word for explaining. So to explain what's going on with Israel is basically what's implicit in that. It's a euphemism for propaganda, and it's a specifically Israeli propaganda. And yeah, it is. I started doing the show because it was something I wanted to do for a long time. I actually wanted other people to do it, just a show in which, it kind of weekly or bi-weekly covers just the alternate reality that Zionists kind of live in. And I wanted someone else to do it because I was like, that sounds like a lot of work, and I'd rather just listen to it. It sounds like fun. Someone should do that. And also there's not much of an audience for it. It's like me and, 5 other anti-Zionist Jews who would be actually listening. And then October 7th happened, and I just kind of watched a lot of people that I knew who were, if not self-described liberal Zionists, they were, liberal and also had a little bit of Zionism in them. And I just watched it flip to just kind of like full-on fascist mentality, and
so what's that like? What are I'm not Jewish, so I don't have family members that have to have these conversations with. I have other people, but I think it's probably a little bit different for you, also growing up Jewish and like all.
Well, I grew up secular. So I didn't grow up religious at all. Being Jewish was an ethnic thing and a cultural thing. And Zionism was also very intrinsic to that, because Zionism itself wasn't about being religiously Jewish. It was about kind of being like an ethnic safe haven for Jews. That was kind of the way it was pitched. So it was almost served as a replacement for being religiously Jewish. It was like, at some point, we're all going to have to move there. When the Nazis come to power, that's where we got to go. And anyone who's against that idea clearly must be, anti-Semitic or, be a Nazi themselves. So it took a while for me to kind of slowly pull out of this idea that, Israel exists for the purpose of me as someone who grew up in Culver City, Los Angeles, to one day move there as a safe haven, and that anything they do in order to ensure that someday I'll move there is justified, which is,
Yeah, like what were some of the most frustrating arguments that you encountered after October 7th in some of these personal conversations? Just off the top of your head.
Yeah, well, there's a lot. The biggest one was talking to people who immediately turned into a baby after October 7th. And what I mean by that is like their brains went from like being, I think, like critical people, like they did a lot of critical thinking, to being completely helpless little wieners, where they were just like, well, what's Israel supposed to do? Like, they were attacked, and now it's like there's nothing else they can do. And I always tell them, I'm like, well, there's certainly something between nothing and genocide, right? Like just right in between that. You can't justify anything that they do. And so it was like talking to people who decided that they were going to just like leave their brain at the door and just kind of again, just go with whatever the Zionist crowd around them was going with. So, they were repeating all the same slogans, all the same talking points, all the same kind of like bad faith questions. Like what would you do if you were the prime minister of Israel? Wouldn't you do the same thing? And I also found people doing like really dated Hasbara. Like I was talking to people, one person who will remain nameless, who is since October 7th now talks a lot about how pro-Israel they are, when before they were seemingly a progressive. Mm-hmm. And he was like repeating talking points that, you know, only someone who had literally never read a single thing about Israel would say. And I know that's not him. Like he would say, like, well, you know, Gaza's not occupied. The settlements left in 2005, and then there was a Hamas coup, and they've been at war ever since. And I'm just like, I know you know that is not the actual narrative of what happened. Like, and I know you know what an occupation is beyond the fact that settlements left Gaza. So what are we actually doing here? And the answer is defending Israel at all costs.
So Israel's clearly not a safe space for Jewish people. America is pretty safe for Jewish people.
Yeah, like most places in the West don't have, like giant mass killings of Jews in the last, however many decades. Not to say that that's not something that couldn't happen again. And of course, that's something that should be guarded against. But the idea that Israel is the one that's going to keep Jews safe is based on what? What have they done? Like that? Have they? No one's. An IDF soldier has never been airdropped into my high school to tell the kids to stop poking at my nose. What are they? How are they keeping me safe? I don't understand. Once you get past the idea that it is just on its face ridiculous to think that Israel is a place that will protect Jews, somehow a state is going to be a safe haven for Jews, and once you get past that, you realize what is this whole narrative about at all? If it doesn't actually guard against anti-Semitism and it actually exports a lot of anti-Semitism, then what is actually the point of this project? It makes no sense.
It's almost like a utopian vision, I guess, that has. I'm trying not to overstep with it, but it's almost like a heaven-like perception of
the way it's sold to us is that. That's how it's sold. It's just it's a land. It's like FUBU, but for the Jews. It's for us, by us, and when you go there, you do feel that it is. It's why the birthright trip is so effective, because you go there and you're just oh my God, just it's a whole country made out of camp songs. Yeah. And so you're you're stoked because you've never seen, anything quite like it. And the reason you haven't is because it's fake.
Right.
It's not.
Did you go on Birthright?
I did.
Yeah. What was that experience like?
Magical. It was a magical experience, magical time. It was, for me, it was kind of radicalized me. I went there with a group of Jews that were like me, just it was secular, half Jews, people who were more Zionist than they were, I guess, Jewish in a way. It was people who wanted to feel that connection. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, what they're really good at preying on is this idea of wanting that kind of community, that kind of brotherhood. We're all brothers here. We're all, we all share the same story and all that. And when you go there, you quickly like realize that they're essentially selling you a timeshare for like someone else's house, you know. And it was wild. Like there was one instance in which it was very clear they were like trying to sell us stuff. It was like, did you ever see The Interview? That movie with Seth Rogen where they go to North Korea?
Yes.
Okay. And you know the way they sell North Korea and kind of like the Western news is like everything there is fake. You go to a grocery store and it's fake, and you know all the people pretend to be happy. It was kind of like that, but for real. Like we were at we were on the bus going up to like Haifa or something, and they had to stop off and get gas, and they were like, go in and buy some snacks at the gas station, and talk to people. Ask them, what it's like to live in Israel. And so I went in and I bought some candy, and at the front counter, I talked to the guy. I said, so what's it like living in Israel? And he goes, well, I'm a gay Palestinian Arab. And if I didn't live in Israel, if there was no Israel, I'd be dead because, Arabs hate gay people. And here I can be safe. So it's also, like a land for gay people. And I was watching it, and I was like looking around like this is the fakest shit I have ever seen. It was like so clearly a plant. It was right. It was so clearly, because they told us to go in there and start asking. There's one guy there and he speaks perfect English. And the first question being like, hey, how do you like living in Israel? And then he just goes off on this very scripted thing about how
oh my God,
Israel is a safe haven for all of the gays of the world. And I was just like, it was so egregious that for a while I was like, that maybe it wasn't a plant, like, because I just couldn't, in my heart, I was like, that would be so embarrassing if they actually like set that up. And as I kind of like came down from that trip, like emotionally in my head, I was like, that was the craziest thing I've ever seen. I've never experienced like that level of trying to trick you into believing into a right-wing political project.
Did your friends on the trip have to do that exercise too? Like, did they go?
I mean, I was with other people at the time.
How did they react?
I think we all just kind of were like, yeah, exactly. Like that was like, yeah, totally. That is what I've heard about Arabs and how they're bad and how this place is good. And, there wasn't like, we didn't debrief from that. And I remember just sitting there kind of just being like, yeah, that was real. That'd be weird if that wasn't real. It's when a lie is big enough, it's kind of like in the last 8 months, the amount of confident gaslighting where they are like, not only saying, we didn't bomb that hospital, but like also like, how dare you? Like, of course we didn't. Like, look at me. I would never. And you're just like, yeah, I believe them because they seem, I don't know, they just seem like me. They're like me. I also wouldn't bomb a hospital. And then a day later, they're like, well, we have to bomb hospitals.
Right.
Because there's terrorists holding hostages in there. And you're just like, but you said, and you cried. You said, you cried, and you made me think. And so like you want to believe people, and you want to, it's like, and that's kind of was the thing with that trip, was like the sincerity of it. Everyone was like just so sincere. We even went to one of the apartheid walls, and they were just kind of like, this is the reality that we live with. I know it's tragic. It sucks. It's such a fucking
Well,
bummer.
I spoke to a liberal Zionist that I'm close with who didn't even want to say the word apartheid. So, that's at least an improvement. But maybe on the physical walls in front of you, you got to be like.
They didn't say apartheid. They said, I knew it was an apartheid wall. They're like, this is our
special
security
wall.
Our white picket security fence. And, And they were, but they do the thing where they're like, man, this is the sad reality. We have to do this because, as you know, they're demons, and I mean, that's like what's implied. And so it's like the way in which the sincerity of it and the kind of like appeal to your, not just like your own empathy and Western sentiments, but also like the fact that they look like you and they talk like you and they sound like you, maybe with a funny accent, but you're like, yeah, we're the same. It gets you to kind of like really drop your guard. And, I think especially when it comes to like doing Hasbara, it works because you want to believe someone who says and all the nice things and speaks, like not just rationally, but also empathetically about something. But it's an empathetic defense of atrocities. And in their way of communicating it, you start believing, well, maybe they're not atrocities. Maybe I just don't understand something. Maybe I'm too stupid to understand why sometimes it's okay to imprison 2.2 million people. Like maybe there's like a good reason for that. Because why would they be so adamant about it, sincere about it? Like they're not foaming at the mouth. They're like into yoga and shit.
It's the banality of evil I mean, it really is, right?
Yeah.
And what I am curious about is, like, for liberal Zionism, there's this emotional quality that I don't fully understand, but it's almost as if calling the Israeli settler project a racist one is so, like, anathema. It's so far off from people who identify as liberal because of like the Holocaust and the atrocities that Jewish people have gone through, and because like the lessons that were learned were good in the sense of one of the most liberal voting blocs in this country are Jewish Americans, right? And so there's like racism is bad, right? The conception of being, somebody who's enlightened as a liberal Jewish person in this country means I don't like racism, but it's so. And so it's so core to an identity that it becomes like this really like emotional heavy lift for them that they can't really grapple with, that I find to be like a psychological marvel, to be honest.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. It's I didn't realize, I think, the depth of programming for some people. And I think like I actually have empathy for it because I can't claim to know what it's like to I mean, I guess for me, I just go like, fuck, maybe if I had like been to Hebrew school a bunch, I think, maybe it'd be different for me. Maybe but instead, because, my family had no religion growing up, like, I feel like maybe I'm just not as committed to the idea the way everyone else seems to be. I don't know what it is. I can't quite explain it, other than the fact that like, you are so, as a liberal, attached to your self-conception as I'm good. I do good thing. I recycle. I cut soda can holders so turtle and fish don't swim into it. I put black square on Instagram. Like I'm good. I am good. And then to have this like core belief questioned about like the right of Israel to defend itself, when that gets questioned, they're just like, no, that has to be good because I want them to do it and I'm good. Anything I like is good. So everyone else must be bad because I have a commitment to, fighting racism, fighting sexism, fighting homophobia. And so I think like you really see how deep the egotism and narcissism goes within like American liberals. and
broadly, right?
Yeah, just broadly. And I feel like with a lot of liberals who aren't Zionists, who aren't definitely the ones who aren't Jewish, but ones who haven't been brought up with it, I think a lot of them, they will passively support, they're passive Zionists. They're like, well, I don't know, Biden, if Biden says, then good, because Biden good. But you see them in general, they have the same feelings when, someone tells them to check their privilege, and they're just like, oh, I didn't know that I could go full Nazi, but now I'm gonna. Like, it's very easy. They say, like, scratch a liberal and a fascist bleeds.
Yeah.
And it's like, I've never seen a more clear example than the last 8 months. It's just
right.
Fascists are bleeding everywhere. God damn.
Yeah. I'm also curious too. Have you now seen some silence? Because I feel like December, January-ish on, the liberal Zionists stopped posting for the most part.
Yeah.
I mean, we got the thank God for those hostages coming home, the 4 that were killed, that were rescued, which they could have been rescued via ceasefire, but they wanted to kill nearly 300 Palestinians in the process.
Well, then you don't get to kill a bunch of people.
Right. I know. That would have sucked.
That would suck.
Yeah, it hurt my feelings.
Oh yeah, come on! Why would we do that when we could just kill them? Yeah, no, I've seen silence. I've definitely seen, people go from, posting a bunch, the first 3 months to kind of slowly tapering off, only to pop up again whenever there's an article released that says Palestinian, Hamas commander says, I want my people to die. I'm bad. and they're like, see? And then they just go back into hiding.
Yes, right.
Retreat into the shadows.
But do you think they're uncomfortable at all right now? I'm hoping.
I don't know, because they have stopped texting me back, Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine so. The problem is, and this is why I still try to talk to, just interpersonally, people I know who are liberal Zionists who supported this early on, vocally. I try to talk to them because I don't want them to do the thing that I think a lot of liberal Zionists will do, which is section off into their own bubble. And then have their very nuanced take on why this is bad because killing people is bad, especially innocent people,
babies. Yeah.
But isn't it crazy how many anti-Semites are on college campuses? They get to live in their nuanced bubble. I experienced this when I was younger, back when Facebook was a thing, where before I felt comfortable talking in public to people about my thoughts about Israel, I only wanted to talk with other Jews about it, because it was the only place where I felt safe, that I was talking to people who didn't want Jews to die, people I knew they weren't anti-Semites. I mean, and yes, Jews can be anti-Semites, of course, but it was
well, they don't understand this group. They, even if they are well-meaning,
yes.
And for the Palestinians, they don't understand what we've gone through. And
right.
They could never understand.
They could never understand, and also I just it was just a deep paranoia about people when they talked about Israel. I was like, why do you care so much? What's the big deal? There's so many things going on. Look at, why don't you talk about whatever's happening in Africa? They never say anything when, how black on black crime, it's that was the feeling where they're just what, talk about anything else. So I would feel that. I would be I'm suspicious. And then it eventually, I just kind of came out of it, because I was just this feels everything feels like I'm guarding myself against this greater truth that's going to destroy kind of a pillar of my own ideology in a way, you know, like this idea of like Israel as like this beautiful thing that was created to help all Jews. And I just was so afraid of losing it that I only wanted to talk to other Jews about it. And I only wanted to like, stay in my own bubble. And my fear is that people are at that stage and they could easily revert backwards, because like a bubble of people can be radicalizing in both directions. Like you don't know where it could go. So I try to, I still try to talk to liberal Zionists in my life, and come at them with, empathy and understanding, because I don't want them to just talk to each other, because they will stay supporting the status quo. And then they'll like, as a crumb to the Palestinian cause, they'll say, but I hate Netanyahu.
Yeah, I know. He's crazy.
He's crazy.
Well, so my advice, your advice to me would probably not to be to try that, because I've tried to talk, and I don't think as the most moral Gentile, as I call myself on your most moral podcast. No,
that's right.
Right. But like as somebody who's not a part of that community, I think it's hard. I want to have those conversations.
I think you can still have them. I do not discourage conversations. I don't say, oh no, only Jews should talk. I actually think it's better for people to for anyone doesn't matter, race, religion, ethnicity, culture, whatever. Just like if you have friends who and not like online people, I'm not talking parasocial. You will never be able to convince someone online to take you seriously. But like if you know somebody, call them, and it is okay to talk to them. And if they're like, obviously triggering you or fucking you up, then yeah, you don't have to have toxic people in your life. But I don't discourage people from doing it. So I wouldn't say, nah, don't do it. I'm just saying, that is going to be a roadblock always. Just the idea that like, well, but are you secretly harboring anti-Semitic feelings, and it's really it's annoying, because that paranoia is not I think it's good for people in general to look out for anti-Semitism, but I also feel like it is this defense mechanism against the critical thinking when it comes to this specific issue. And this specific issue is not just like, oh, some weird little thing. It's like a genocide is happening. If you gotta actually start like critically thinking about this now. You can't just be a passive Zionist anymore. Like at this point, when someone just screams like fuck Zionists, fuck Zionism, no Zionists allowed in this space, like you need to sit there for a second and go like, are they actually saying no Jews, or are they talking about a specific far-right fascist political ideology? And once you realize that, then I think, at least I would hope, you could.
We're hoping.
Yeah, stop thinking everything's anti-Semitic. Yeah.
So we'll end up here. We have this clip from 1980s apartheid South Africa, and there's so many parallels in terms of how these white South Africans are referring to Black people in South Africa. And I'm just wondering if this brings up and evokes any memories from your birthright trip and some of the other conversations that you had.
Well, and if I could just jump in, like with the last conversation, I think the point of this is like to say, like, it's not to say to Zionists, it's not your fault as Jews. It's the fault as colonial occupiers, because what these Afrikaners say here, I think, well, we'll play it. It sounds strikingly familiar with how you rationalize, other stuff.
Know that if there is not the strength of will on the part of the Afrikaner to follow the course he's chosen, and to do it to a certain extent ruthlessly, although I would say he will always try to justify it vis-a-vis certain moral principles. But if this is missing, I mean, we have lost then we must capitulate. Then we have no policy.
The Afrikaner is of European stock. Our traditions are European, but we evolved a different set of traditions to suit our being an African people now. And we differ from the English in small respects, but we differ very greatly from the other peoples who inhabit this country.
Yes, I think that each man has been given his piece of country and the right to vote in his country, and that is fair. Because if you have to put, if we have to say one man, one vote in South Africa and just leave it open, then the white is not going to get a fair share because he has contributed economically to making this country what it is today. And if you say tomorrow, one man, one vote, then he doesn't, there is no chance for him. So it's better that each person be given the chance to have his piece of country and decide how he wants to live and what he wants to do with his country there.
Beautiful. Yeah. I mean, it's the exact same fucking thing. It's like, I don't know how, like, down to the fact that they also have a silly accent. I'm like, what are we? How do you not? It is unbelievable. The parallels at this point. The only argument that Israel isn't apartheid is, well, no, because apartheid only applies to one thing ever in the history of the world.
Same with genocide. I mean, we heard that, who was saying it yesterday, that there's no gas chambers, so it can't be a genocide. I'm
right.
Blanking on who it was, but that also means that, every other genocide that wasn't the Holocaust is not one either. But.
Exactly. It's just like this insane semantics game where you can label something something a little bit more less charged. It's a way of doing euphemisms. That's all this is. You look at that video and they're saying the exact same argument, which is on its face an anti-democratic argument. It's just like, well, no, you can't let everybody vote, because then they'll
said it there. The one person, one vote. We can't have that happen. And and that's what makes it so. The only democracy in the Middle East. That's what's so insane. That's
what I'm saying.
It's an inversion of it, and that's how deep the propaganda goes. When you're saying something is one thing, when it's actually the opposite thing, How do you penetrate that? Because it's just like you're living in the upside down world.
Yes, and it's like, one of the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast, because I was just like, there was a time at which this was such a fringe issue, or not fringe, but like something that, if you were a lefty, you cared about it. If you were Jewish or Palestinian, of course, it was an issue you knew about. But in general, I felt like the general public was just their default pro-Israel position, and they weren't exposed to this kind of like doublespeak and this kind of propaganda. And now, that it's everywhere, in the last 8 months on the mainstream media and mainstream news, I was like, I hope people know that this is ridiculous. I need to know that other people see these like Elon Levies and shit and go like, these guys are just like paid liars. They just go there and they like say Israel is the only democracy. And meanwhile, they're also advocating for the annihilation of a whole people who have no voting rights within the state that actually controls their air, land, and sea and economy and everything, every aspect of their lives, outside of what toilet they shit in. And they're not separating the drinking fountains in Gaza. They just control the water. So I'm like, come on, people need to. If they don't know, they need to know. So I was like, I'm gonna do a podcast about this until this all, until it all works itself out, which it will, I'm sure.
Yeah, totally. Well, I think you'll be in business for quite a while, because Ilan Pape, we played a clip of him saying that he believes this is the beginning of the end of the Zionist project, but at the same time, it's going to be quite a bloody path forward. And so, not to be dark about it, but
great. That's great. Listen, before this podcast, I mostly just did TV rewatch podcasts. I have a show called Pod Yourself a Gun, which is a Sopranos rewatch podcast. And then it was a Pod Yourself The Wire podcast. And that's what I like. That's what I want to do. I don't want to do this.
Yep. Yeah.
This sucks. Every day something terrible happens, which is just watching a show from 20 years ago is way better for my mental health. But at this point, I'm like, people gotta know.
People gotta know.
People gotta know. Anyways.
Well, by the way, it was George Latimer who said that thing about the gas chambers, the guy running against Jamal Bowman. So Matt,
the APAC guy. Okay, cool.
Yeah, you and Francesca will be in Chicago
That's right.
In a little while.
August 20th and 19th. 19th and 20th will be at Lincoln Lodge in Chicago. The 19th is a live Bituation Room / Bad Hasbara podcast. So we're teaming up for one super podcast. And then the 20th is a live stand-up show, me and Francesca, who is my wife.
My wife.
Yeah, so that'll be fun. If you guys want to go out to that, do it. Or you can just listen to Bad Hasbara wherever you get your podcasts, or you can watch it on YouTube. But
I mean, I was on a month or two ago. That was really a really fun time. So people can check out that
revealing.
Oh well, yeah, I did reveal some secrets.
Yeah, you dropped some knowledge and secrets. No, it's a fun podcast. You were fantastic on it, and we've had a lot of fun. We just had Mark Lamont Hill
on. Yeah,
that was fun. It's on YouTube and it's on podcast apps.
Right.
So you can check it out.
Check it out. We will put a link to Bad Hasbara and in the description wherever you folks are listening to or watching this. Matt, it's always a pleasure. Say hi to Francesca for me. So you guys are doing a stand-up comedy together in Chicago. Are you just leaving the baby in the house and just hoping she fends for herself?
Fuck.
Yeah.
Francesca, we have a child. No, we have her mother, Francesca's mother, is gonna be taking care of the baby, and as well as a friend of ours who is our babysitter, and we're just like, what if we were just not parents for like 2 fucking days? It's 2 days, no baby. We do stand up. We do live podcasts. We forget what our life has become, and so that's what we're gonna do. Listen, we love our child. We love our child, obviously, but sometimes you just
I don't know why you have to say it like that. It's just
well, because there's a big but. There's a caveat of like sometimes you just want to not be with them for a little bit.
Yeah,
you love them, but you hate them. You know what I mean?
I understand.
I love my kid. Anyways, it's gonna be fun. And Francesca and I, we're not performing. We're not a duo act. So one of us will be doing 45 or 35 minutes, and the other one will be doing 35 minutes. And we're gonna have some openers and stuff, and it's gonna be fun.
That's
awesome. The live podcast will be great. I'm gonna bring my Netanyahu soundboard.
Crazy Jews.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, I did.
Crazy Jews.
Yeah. Also, this.
I want you to come.
You should get when he did that Dr. Phil interview where he said, "I assure you, Dr. Phil, we have more than fingernails." That's my next edition for your soundboard.
Yeah,
I've been collecting little sound bites, including that one, but my computer broke earlier this week, and
Can I swear? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you've been doing it the whole time.
I forgot.
I had one or like a few folders on my desktop that I didn't save, and it was like 6 or 7 sound drops I've been collecting until Sam finally gives me a soundboard. I'm so mad at myself.
Soundboards rule, dude. Check this out.
You're good.
You're good. Look at
I'm
that.
Good.
Also, this one.
Tough neighborhood.
Tough neighborhood.
All right, that's my suggestion for you is I assure you, Dr. Phil, we have more than fingernails, okay?
Yeah. That'll be my next one, and then if you find any more, let me know, because the Netanyahu soundboard is a lot of fun.
I want you to come.
I want you to come.
We used to have him saying the so-called progressives are now regressive.
Oh, bars. He got bars.
He really does have evil villain voice.
It's the most evil villain voice. It's just so, oh God, the way people.
It's like Jeremy Irons playing Scar. It was a little less cartoony.
Yeah. Prime Minister Scar is out here. Long live the king. You're just like, I trust that guy. He should do a war.
Yeah. He's crazy, but I support everything he does.
Yeah, well, what else can we do but support a literal madman?
The Scar administration has to come to an end when you get one of the hyenas in power.
Oh God, little Elon Levy hyena just there trying to explain apartheid away.
All right, well, this was lovely. So check out Bad Hasbara. Check out the Chicago show on August 19th or the 20th. We'll put a link to that as well. Thanks so much, Matt. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Love you guys.
Love you. Bye. All right. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this part of the program, the free part. I love Matt. I think he's so funny.
He's very funny.
Oh, such a good dude.
I can't get his TikTok out of my head from like the first month of the bombing, where he said all
I'm
the
bad
things
now.
that liberal Jews think, and then said, "But you know what? I'm bad now."
Yeah, I'm a fascist. Suns Out Guns Out says, thank you, Emma, for calling out the fundamental definitional issue with a two-state solution. One question, though. Why do we need to identify Israeli society and innocent civilians as sick? I think you all called their society sick for supporting the genocide. In the same spirit, are Gazans sick for supporting Hamas? Of course not. Well, I think it's a little bit of a different situation.
Different type of pathology. I mean, I would say the American settler population had the exact same type of sickness, the exact same sort of virus, and the members of South Africa society there were sick. Now, I have always said, and we have been clear, that the hate in that region is not a function of anyone's religion, but is a function of that settler colonial structure being imposed. And that is on both sides, the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, there are certain pathologies that will come, for instance, like exacerbated fundamentalism to people who are colonized. It's a different kind of sickness because
I don't think we said Israelis were sick. I think we said the society was sick. But I do think that.
Yeah, the society is sick, and we're not helping it by our continued support of the society, and when we should be strictly supporting the folks who are protesting for the end of the war. Within the society, but again, like even those folks, a lot of them don't really care about the Palestinian death. It's just because they think it's a better way to get the hostages, which they are right about. But yeah, like I think that it's it's worth bearing in mind, like again, that don't individualize hate and look at it more as a structure, and you don't overall blame the propagandists. But that doesn't mean you pull a punch on when a society's sick. The society's sick. Like, yeah, people point out U.S. society was sick when we invaded Iraq. Absolutely, and it was the same sort of hysteria.
Nazi society, Germany was sick and supportive of the extermination of Jewish people during that time. I would have said Germany was sick at the time of Hitler's rule. Absolutely. So I don't really think it's that controversial.
Yeah, I don't think it's that bad to do.
Hank Aaron 715 says, happy 1-year anniversary of your appearance on Tim Pool's show on Sunday. I didn't realize that. Thank you for the thanks for the appearance, as I just got back into politics when you made that appearance after following you at TYT. It made me discover
She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Yes, I was. It made me discover the Majority Report and have been a member since January. Well, thank you, Hank Aaron 715. That is so good to hear that appearance.
Sort of why you did it.
Yeah, it kind of was why I did it. Yeah, that's kind of why I did it. Wanted to get some attention for us and, embarrass him. And hopefully I did that. All right, guys, we are going to head into the fun half. Pretty short fun half. But Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning, Milton Alamati talking about South Africa, actually, and the the coalition, the coalescence of a center-right party following recent elections, and why it signifies maybe a new form of apartheid. So we'll check that out. Patreon.com/Left Reckoning with Milton.
And on ESPN, we'll be back on Monday, but we did talk about, I guess it was Tuesday, because, we talked about the Celtics winning the championship, our assessment of that. We also talked about the Stanley Cup playoffs, which are still going on. You know, the Oilers have won 2 straight to avoid a sweep, and now they go back to Edmonton, which could make some things interesting. We talked about Caitlin Clark, the freak out in the right-wing media space about her, Rory McIlroy choking, youtube.com/ESPN show. All right, guys, no time for calls because we've got basically, less than a half hour to do the fun half. So we'll read your IMs, though. See you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait. Whoa. Look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
Yeah, I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please. No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. She was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind.
She was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
Had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka tour.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion. Real thing. That's
poker with the boys. That offered a tour?
That's a real thing. That's
poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, buddy.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour,
deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has like the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the majority report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks, right?
Now shut up. I don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best.
Pilot tour.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't binge. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
sorry.
She wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back, folks. I just shoveled some food in my mouth, and we are here to have some fun in the fun half. To more from the 5, Matt Lieb, the kind of guest who only shows up when old Father Time Sam is off and the kids are running the asylum. Nicola says, it's a little sick how often I find myself repeating tour, sushi, and poker with Du Bois over and over as I go about mundane tasks. It's the weirdest earworm. It definitely is. Altua Continua, I have a problem with the Oilers suddenly winning because for a while I have felt that the Stanley Cup final gets artificially extended to increase profit. It's absolutely ridiculous that they've been playing for 2.5 months. I mean, they're playing in Florida in late June. The ice conditions are severely affected by sometimes outside heat. And I don't know. They should, and the NBA should, shorten the season to...
The NBA blew their whole momentum having a giant week in between the conference finals and the finals.
Right. Well, I get the guy. I'm not going to be upset if players need to rest, but I do think that the regular season needs to be significantly shortened. But they will
off
never...
10 games. Yeah.
They'll never do it.
They would make up for it. It's so short-sighted.
I know.
You'd be able to command higher prices for each of the games. You'd be able to schedule it on more set times where people know that again, you'd get close to football because everyone knows that there's football to watch on Sunday. It'd become more of an event. It's such a instance of the profit motive getting in the way of even more profit.
Right. Nolan Voigt, waiting for the clip of Emma to be used out of context where she said German society was sick in World War II, LOL. Well, I don't know how out of context that can be.
Yeah, how bad, I think
sick
people get
it. I think that would be pretty easy for me to rebut, to be honest.
Unless they think that sick isn't it's a good thing. That's sick. But I don't think so.
Mr. Melancholy, Matt Lieb is a great guest. Thanks for having him on. Pool Tim Association says liberals take comfort in institution existing to counter each awful thing that they don't want to confront personally, so they never question those institutions and just assume the wrong person is in charge of them. But that's why they are comforted by Israel existing as a project. It's better than questioning Western imperialism. If they have to question Israel, it starts with confronting their own place in the world.
Or even confronting Christian European anti-Semitism. It's oh no, we did it. We gave them a colony.
Yeah. And I think Peter Beinart said it best on this show, that the people who are more willing to question the myth of America as a promised land formed on a hostile frontier are more willing